Wolf, as the debate about torture rages on in Washington with calls for investigations of the Bush administration, here is perhaps a surprising nugget about how Americans view torture of suspected terrorists. I was surprised by this. It turns out that the more often people go to church, the more likely they are to support torture. This is according to a new survey by the Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life. The poll finds more than half of Americans who attend church services at least once a week, 54% of them, say the use of torture is often or sometimes justified. Only 42% of people who seldom or never go to church agree with that statement. White evangelical Protestants are the religious group most likely to agree, while people unaffiliated with any religious group are least likely to support torture. Of course, evangelicals were a major voting bloc courted by President Bush both times he ran for office, and former Bush officials continue to speak out now about how these harsh interrogation techniques yielded critical information that helped keep this country safe. But it's ironic that the faithful are more supportive of torture, isn't it? Overall, Pew found 49% of Americans say torture is at least sometimes justified. 47% say it rarely or never is. Republicans are more likely to support it than Democrats, and a majority of independents believe torture is sometimes justified. So here's the question. Why is it that the more often Americans go to church, the more likely they are to support torture of suspected terrorists? Go to CNN.com/Cafferty File. Post a comment on my blog. Every once in a while, you find one of those head scratchers. I think this is one of those.
That's a good question, and surprising to me as well. All right.
Well, if the question this hour, why is it that the more often Americans go to church, the more likely they are to support torture of suspected terrorists? One of the more provocative questions we've asked around here in a while, if I do say so myself. Alex in Florida writes, this should be a wake-up call to pastors. They need to teach their congregations that supporting a conservative ticket based on some values like marriage and or abortion doesn't mean that you have to support the parts of that platform that don't jive with those values. They need to address the paradox and say you cannot be pro-life and at the same time be pro-death penalty, pro-guns, and pro-torture. Boots writes, hi, Jack, I'm not sure the faithful finding torture acceptable should surprise any of us. Isn't that what Islamic fundamentalists do? All radicalized forms of thinking lack innate tolerance. That's what radicalism does, whether it's based on religion, politics, culture, money, or anything else. And that's what I think we should be considering here. Charles writes, I'm an evangelical Protestant, and I absolutely abhor torture, Bush, and all he stood for. I can only hope that the poll, which was the basis of this accusation, was somehow flawed. Ralph in Florida writes, frequent churchgoers are more likely to be self-righteous, intolerant, and ready to demonize others, all of which makes it easier for them to justify torture. Michael in New Mexico, this is a loaded question, Jack. I don't accept the premise. Churchgoers are not more likely to support torture. I don't know who they polled to arrive at such an absurd conclusion, but I suspect it to be propaganda with an agenda to smear church believers using a very broad brush. Clinton writes, why? Why? Really, Jack, come on. Can you say crusades? Can you say holy war? Can you say jihad? Nobody loves man's inhumanity to man more than those who have God on their side. And George writes, having been tortured sitting through all of those sermons, I think it's no wonder churchgoers simply want to share the misery. If you didn't see your email here, you can go to my blog, CNN.com/Cafferty File. Look for yours there among hundreds of others. This is a good one to go to the blog and read the emails on, because we've got a lot of really bright people that address this question.
I'm going to do it, Jack. Thank you.